do the introduction and...
Right, so welcome to the PAC podcast on Saturday, 16th May 2020. I'm Tristan, here with my co-hosts Nick Markham and Lawrence Reed, and we have for our guest today Alex Caney, who is a good friend of mine and Lawrence's, and who is a great musician, is in a band called Noble Rot, and is a medical writer as well. So we brought him on board to talk about COVID-19 and that in relation to the arts and mental health. So, welcome, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. No one's ever said nice things like that before. It's great.
Yeah, man.
How's it going, dude?
Yeah, it's going very well, mate. We'd love to hear your thoughts as a medical journalist of articles you've written. Have you found any recent articles written on coronavirus?
Well, have you written any?
No, I haven't.
Have you written any? Yeah.
Well, let me explain what I do. I just report what other researchers investigate. So I'm totally not qualified, but I do have an understanding of medicine. I've been doing it for a long time. Yes, I was asked to work on a piece that was a very long, big article, many pages in length, that was prepared by something like 50 virologists and pediatric specialists for the position statement of the European Association of, I can't remember what, on coronavirus in children. And they asked me would I summarize it into nice bullet points, no more than 4 pages in length for translation among all the European languages. Right. This was just only a couple of weeks ago. And it was quite intriguing. They said that of something around 170,000 proven documented cases in China, which, as we all know, has the largest number of cases, only 1% were, only something like 1,000 of 100,000 were under 18 years old. Which is, if you think about it, that proportion of the society is 30-40% of everyone, because as we know, age is a pyramid, so younger people far outnumber older people. So despite that, only 1% had this. And it appears not to affect children at all, and if so, only very mildly, including children who are in the same household as parents who've had quite severe symptoms, apparently. And they looked into it, and it seems that children don't have the receptor for the virus to enter the cells in the trachea, in the mucosa. And so they seem to be immune to it, COVID-19, and the SARS virus that causes it, SARS-20 or something. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
That was interesting. So it seems that a lot of, I'm sorry that I really don't follow the news here at all. I avoid it at all costs, but I hear the headlines, and it seems that there's a lot of worry about kids going back to school, and it could be a misplaced worry, because it seems that children just don't get it, and if they do, it's really mild.
But then, of course, the worry is, they can pass on to adults, right? That's the worry, isn't it? Even if they catch it, they can be contaminated with it, right? That's the fear, isn't it?
And have we not had confirmed cases, at least I've heard in the news, of children contracting it?
Yeah.
Well, there are, but it's...
Definitely. But it's different,
But it's hard, maybe, I don't know. The thing is with the testing is sometimes tests have come out as a false negative, other times potentially a false positive. Even our testing system isn't 100% accurate.
There was a 13-year-old who died from it, but that's not really a child, that's a teenager. But that's unusual as well, I suppose.
But Alex was saying it's under 18s in general, isn't it?
The age group was younger people, yeah. I don't know whether it's actually age-related. It seems that, if you usually say adults are over 18 and everyone else is a child or an adolescent or a minor.
Yeah.
If it's true that they don't have the receptor on the cells for the virus to enter the cells, which is how all viruses work, that it seems that they may inhale droplets containing the virus. And because the virus has nothing to hold on to, literally like an anchor, it's just exhaled straight back out or destroyed.
Well, that's interesting.
Right. So they seem unable to pass it on as well because they just don't have it.
Oh, well, you're saying...
What you mean is that it can attach to a child, but it can't then, the child then can't get ill.
No, it seems like it just can't attach.
It can't attach at all.
The children
Not even
don't
to
have
their hands or their face.
No, least of all. I mean, it has to go into your body in order to produce symptoms and to infect you.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
what if a lot of people are just asymptomatic?
Pardon?
So they may catch it, but then just not have any symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, the epidemiological picture looks like they just don't get it at all. And if they're seropositive with antibodies to it, because they've exposed so much, because their parents have both had it, for example, and they're so likely to have it, they still don't display any symptoms.
So unlike the flu,
that's really interesting, man.
Unlike the flu, which is predominantly culls older people, because they're more susceptible to the symptoms. Children can get the flu, but obviously they don't suffer the same sort of threats that the older generation would.
Sure, I mean, it's a different virus altogether. We're just talking about these coronaviruses.
So surely this could be an opportunity then. Surely the medical research opportunity would be to, I want to move on to relate this to the broader topic of the arts as well, but in relation specifically to COVID, if this is at least seems to be mostly true, then surely that kind of immunity that kids have could be something that could be used. I know, is it something literally biological that only kids have, or could it be adapted in some kind of mechanism we could put in adults to do some sort of, I don't know, technology or... Yeah,
is there research being put into that? Basically, is what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, if you imagine a cell is like a jelly bubble with a stick sticking out where the virus can attach to it, and then the virus can go into the cell via the anchor, so to speak. I'm sure you could probably develop a drug that would inhibit that anchor, which only adults express, and thereby stop the virus from going into their cells. So yeah, that would probably be one of the ways that it's tackled. The other would be a vaccine, which would
another virus.
See, to do that.
Funnily enough, vaccines are viruses. They're inactivated viruses.
Good point. A vaccine is being developed currently, right?
I'm sure plenty of big pharmaceutical companies are on it. I'm very sure.
How much do you know about any developments in that?
I couldn't tell you because, I mean, all I did was work on the translation of this one position statement that had that interesting finding that children seem to be immune. It also say that the symptoms that the disease does cause are from very mild, from asymptomatic to mild to flu-like symptoms.
Right.
So it's really not the terrifying disease that we're all led to believe.
It's not.
It's not. I really don't think so. Well, I mean, it's like anything that affects people who are weak anyway, and who have, for example, are immunocompromised. I mean, the elderly always get it. Unfortunately, they're that's why people die as they get older. The elderly are always subject to every infection and every disease, and cancer only kills it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame, but it's a factor of vulnerability.
So Alex, would you say that the global response to the virus has been exaggerated and kind of unnecessary, or do you think it's sort of just over precaution? And
well, at a risk of making myself very unpopular, I would say vastly, and I'm the kind of person you could ask about 9/11 and everything else, and I would say the press are on the side of the very wealthy, which is a good thing in a way, because the status quo, which they're determined to preserve, it's bad for people who are trying to climb up in the world, because we can't, and it's great for people who are extremely wealthy, because they get to keep their wealth for sure. It's under no threat at all, not even a penny of it. On the other hand, it does stabilize the world, and it's nice to live in a world that is stable. And the response to COVID-19, if it is to isolate everyone and make it stop spreading, vastly overdone as it is, and I think there are plenty of other underlying stuff going on too, which I could talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah,
it's probably for everyone's good in the end, on average, because we live in a stable world.
Wait, what's
we're not rich, but it's stable. Pardon?
Sorry,
yeah. I see where you're coming from.
Hold on, guys, hold on. Alex, what's for everyone's good? Yeah, you lost me a bit there. Sorry.
What's what? Sorry.
What is for everyone's good? What is the good thing that's happening?
The world that we live in is a beneficial world for all of us. It's safe. We have good healthcare. We can walk around at night without being shot and blown up.
You mean the UK?
Yeah.
Wait, do you mean the
I
UK?
shouldn't laugh. It's true.
I'm still a bit confused. You mean the UK is like that, or?
Well, Europe, the Western world, for sure, all of it.
Right.
Even the United States has a reputation for violence in their cities. If you go there, you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see it at all. I mean, there are ghettos.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There are ghettos in England.
And coronavirus in relation to that, what were you trying
Well, I would say that if you compare the threat, okay, let's take what we've all been doing. I've been under lockdown mainly because I lost my job and I've got nothing better to do than stay at home. Everywhere's closed. I can't go anywhere. And if you knock on someone's door, they'll say, "Don't come in. Don't give me the virus," because everyone is under lockdown. So if you say to yourself, "Okay, by staying at home, I've prevented myself from getting an illness which could kill me," I don't know, but it's really totally unlikely. Was that worth the trade-off for the 2 months of our lives we just lost? The threat of being ill, and I think maybe I might have contracted the virus, and I think someone else here thinks he might have as well. And I was sick. I came down with something that kept me in bed for a day, and I was flat on my back. I really couldn't get up. I was quite febrile. In that I was disoriented, and so I came down with something, but it might have been anything. But if it was that virus, I don't think the payoff of losing the last 2 months of my life and however long more it comes to,
of course,
is worth that. I would say why. I didn't choose to stay in. I didn't say, "Look, I'll take a risk. I'll face it," and I didn't say things like, I don't come anywhere near children. I don't have elderly relatives or people really. In fact, I do. I have an elderly.
Well, essentially, it kind of just swept. The lockdown just swept across us, and it happened almost spontaneously. You know what I mean? So everyone kind of agreed to it to a degree.
If the virus is not as dangerous as we're being told, why are all the nations globally putting their economies into a freeze, a standstill? Because surely all the rich people, all the politicians, they need the economy to be ticking over, and by doing this, it's kind of detrimental to the whole sort of their ethos. Surely.
Yeah, good point.
Well, if there were no answer, then we would have to go back and say, okay, then it's all genuine. But there are possible answers, and one that I thought of, and other people have come to similar conclusions is, it seems to be a real change going on in the workplace, whereby everyone's being pushed away from the large office corporate type structures. Some of these offices are huge, with hundreds of desks and with thousands of people worldwide, especially international. The really huge companies with thousands and thousands of employees.
Yeah.
Most of those people have been clamoring for years to work from home, which we can all do. We've all got a computer. A lot of people say, "I hate my commute. It's an hour there and an hour back. It's disgusting. It's hot. It's full of people. Everyone's sweating and it smells and it's disgusting."
Sure, yeah.
People can't afford a maid, if you're not rich, and a lot of people have to negotiate working from home anyway, because I've got to pick my kids up from school after work. So the whole Victorian structure of clocking in at 9 o'clock and staying there next to a candlelight at your desk until 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, it's no longer really required for any of us, myself included. I've been working from home, as I just said. That translation was done at home. So if people really want it, and so much so, there's the companies are scared of a brain drain where people like myself can set myself up as my own company. And I was an employee for many years. That's how I learned my trade. If there's a big movement where people are leaving the companies want to hold on to them, and maybe they thought that giving everyone working from home across the board was too dangerous. What if everyone just did nothing? What if everyone just sat around, playing computer games or just texting each other? So it could be an experiment where they're looking at transitioning to a lot more working from home, but in a controlled condition. And the way they might do it would be, these people are fucking smart. They're very intelligent, and they've got years in secrecy on their side. And they could say something, what would it need to do this? And perhaps something like a massive viral outbreak that's not that bad, but it's enough to convince people that it's scary. And we wouldn't even need to create that, because we know that these viral outbreaks come along. They come out of places like Hong Kong and China and parts of Africa where lots of humans and animals live in close proximity in very overcrowded conditions. These are viral hotspots. And they know that one will eventually come out, so they perhaps waited for this one. And if you think this is all bollocks, and it is bollocks. I just made it all up, really. It's what I think. Well, it's what I suspect. I don't actually think it. Don't quote me on this or anything. But it happened so rapidly. It really made me think this, because if you cast your mind back to when it all started, it began with again, I don't follow the news, but I did see this, that some Britons were kept on a ship in Japan. They were kept in quarantine. This is when it all began, and people were talking about this new virus.
When was this, sorry, Alex? When was this, February?
February, March.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the whole world had it. And all of a sudden, the headlines were the new way of life, the new reality, the new...
I remember when the headline was virus outbreak. I was walking around central London like, this is weird.
It went to new reality it was suddenly everywhere on all,
from then on,
all the channels and all the newspapers. Really. So it just okay. I'll shut up. And let
the new normal.
But it looked like possibly it had been pre-planned. We need this excuse. We need something like a virus. Oh, here it comes, and let's do this.
So the virus is just a scapegoat in order for huge conglomerates and multinationals to downsize their sort of expenses in rental for offices and insurance, because obviously working insurance is huge. And basically they can just allocate people to stay at home and do their work without having all that extra expense of having a whole central hub in the middle of a big city. They can have all their operatives working from home and reduce outgoings further.
I'm going to briefly interrupt here just to say, because we are saying a lot of contentious stuff here. The disclaimer is, this is all just our opinions, of course. We can all agree on that. However, I think it's really interesting. And let's continue from that. I was just going to quickly interject as well and say, it is interesting because maybe it's just not so much even if it was like a planned thing, but maybe even just it happened. There is a threat to older people, it seems. A lot of older people do seem to have died from it. And so maybe it's it's an opportunity. These do put the company as an opportunity to both to benefit themselves and also possibly benefit other people. I don't even know if that makes it a bad thing then. I don't it's quite interesting. Interesting topic this has become, actually. Very interesting.
Well, I think from what Nick was saying, it sounds like the government could exploit certain factors of the lockdown for selfish gain. But
yes.
Where do we know where the line is? I think is what's up for debate.
I don't know. That's right.
Yeah.
See, everyone working from home solves a lot of problems anyway. Solves a lot of problems with commuting and pollution for starters, which are obviously connected, and a huge amount of other problems. Just apart from anything else, there's going to be the food industry is going to die, isn't it? Really, if everyone does start working from home, they won't have all the office people going out
unless everyone grew their own stuff.
Everyone in the world, if it carries on, everyone in the world is going to end up being a courier driver.
I don't understand.
There'll be no shops anymore. We're just shopping online and waiting for a courier driver with a mask on to do his next batch of rubbish.
The thing is, that seems to have normalised now. When I went to supermarkets recently, it seems to be back to normal. There's nothing missing from the shelves. It all seems pretty normal. So maybe, I think they've recognised some things need to remain, but I don't know.
This just seems like the next step in the journey towards a cashless society, where we have to pay. There's no cash anymore. We pay everything on our cards, buy everything on the internet. Everything's documented and logged. What we're buying, what we're purchasing. That's how I think. That's what I think it is.
Yeah. I think it will become cashless.
Yeah. I mean,
everything.
So
eventually, I don't know when, but eventually, yeah.
So on this vein, like continuing, because this is really interesting, and I like. It's really good to have you on board, Alex, because you've like explored these things for a while. Clearly, you're from what you've said, a lot of the stuff, the points you've raised, are not things we've actually heard on the podcast before. So at least not on our podcast. So thank you for that as well. I want to say, and also in relation specifically to like the arts though, and like music and stuff. How do you feel? Like, how have you seen COVID affecting that? Because I mean, obviously, people are doing a lot of stuff from home. Like, for example, we're doing like these podcasts from home. We're doing video forums on Sundays, which we're doing one tomorrow. You're welcome to join in, and we get like basically what we do on Sunday now is like an open mic online, isn't it? And that works.
Yeah.
So how do you feel generally the music industry is going to go, and what do you think is going to be happening with all that and live events and all those things?
It's a good point about live events. It can only if a live event is a band playing in front of a lot of people in the same room, either everyone's going to have to get over it, or maybe everyone will be vaccinated and everyone will be immune and things will go back to that. It's really people are going to we'll have to mix back together again if we're going to have that again. That's unavoidable.
Yeah.
Or
we can't not have it back. Yeah.
All the bands can play to under 18-year-olds.
Yeah, man. So only like 16-year-old prom. Yeah, all over the country.
It's probably most festivals are like that anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, this maybe everyone's wants to have that experience again so badly that'll be what pushes society back to what it was like. Missing things like that. During the last few weeks, when you head outside and you see people looking at you, cautiously, and then running past you and running out into the road, the amount of people that run out into the road in front of cars so as not to walk past me, it's awful. You stand in a line and everyone. I've had people sort of shout at me a couple of times, get back. And people have got their mask on now, and the mask the mask is a terrible thing because it prevents you from smiling, it prevents you from talking. So literally, you go out and you do your business, and you come home, you don't interact with anyone. And if everyone's doing that, that's one of the things I find most awful about this whole thing is communities. It lasts, and people aren't just going to forget about it. That immediately. At the click of a finger, okay, it's gone now, go back to normal. People have been really avoiding each other, and it means communities have become very isolated and lonely places again. And isn't that something that's really, really more valuable even than
of course,
than possibly being
for your own mental health, I think as well. That's a main thing. A lot of people rely on socialising and interaction with their friends, family, and even complete strangers. It's part of life. That is what the whole thing school is about. School is about kids don't want to be homeschooled. They want to go to school to meet friends, to interact, and work out what sort of characters they like and what people they don't like, and that's the whole point of schooling. Really, apart from obviously the educational things, it's about learning how to interact with people. And I think that everyone in this lockdown scenario, a lot of people are struggling with it. I do. I love socialising. I love going out and going to gigs, going to pubs and chatting to people, and that whole thing is what I'm about, you know.
No, I really believe 100% that for that reason, that all the live events and everything will of course still be there, and it will become stronger. We'll have to find a way to make it happen. I've begun to appreciate certain things, like for example, the PAC has become stronger, ironically, because we now do these events every week. You know, me, Nick and Lawrence, we've come together doing this now, which is great. The one good thing about it is, for some people, it seems to have helped artistic people, because we're so focused on what we do. I think artists, if they love what they do that much, they'll find a way to do it regardless. And that's what we've been doing, isn't it? You know? So I feel like that's what matters. But what we need is to find a way to...
Then bringing it back stronger from the online thing we've done. Putting that back out there in clubs.
I figure, right, because I'm in a risk area because I have a respiratory problem. I figure I've either had it, because I got tested for it. I had to go to the hospital recently and they tested me for it. I had a swab test on my throat and nose and they came back with nothing. You know, I figure the likelihood is if I've had it, it didn't really affect me. You know?
Yeah, that is possible. Very possible.
Now, if I was lying in a hospice, in my final days and I contracted it, then it would be a problem, because that's the sort of the main sort of catchment area of the disease is people with pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Exactly, of course.
So I think there should be a bit of leeway if you are in that segment of people that are vulnerable. Then you should adhere to some sort of isolation program. But for the general public and the masses, I think if you are strong, fit and able, you should be able to go about your normal life, you know.
Yeah, welcome back to the second half. So continuing from where we left off, we wanted to now tackle the subject of about well, it actually does lead in very nicely to the whole COVID thing, because it's like the question about rock stars and whether there's that kind of persona is still a real thing. But in a live context, that is really important. So I am curious to know, Alex, what you think about that, because think about the fact that the rock star as a phenomenon is like, it's centered on the live setting, right? You cannot really make a huge impact on loads of people, especially in the sense of rock stars do the hedonism, the partying, the women or the men, whatever they're going for. That all comes from a live setting, doesn't it? So without the live setting, I mean, we are going to get it back, but you know what I mean? Without that right now, it's even more like reduced that. So how do you feel about all that? Like the degree to which all that stuff is, I don't know, changing in whether it's still a real thing.
You're asking me? I would say that the topic came up because I have just read this book, which was about
Uncommon People.
Yeah. Uncommon People by David Hepworth.
Oh,
I read it back, and then I reread it recently, and I was talking about it with Lawrence not long ago, and I think that's why it came up as a topic for this. So it was really about that kind of the rock star that was between the 60s and probably the 80s or 90s, who was someone that everybody knew. All of society was really familiar with this person. There was someone who lived among us, but yet above us. There was someone we never saw really in person. They might make an appearance. If they did, there would be a little. There are people who could lived in a different kind of way. They had more sex. They had more money. They had more better lives. They had more fun, for sure. It was an endless fun. But they could also be tapped on to comment and say profound things. And they released music that everyone went out and bought in droves. You know, it really did. And that's why they were so rich. You know, they had the Rolls Royce because they'd sold 1 million singles. And the author of this book argued that they ended because, as you say, there is still live. I mean, there's a huge live. You know, there are bands everywhere. We're in a band. And it is probably largely hip-hop or sort of dance music. But are they a rock star in that would anyone recognize them? Would the main members of the public, would everyone recognize these people? And are they considered sort of godly or they know something? Of course they don't, but they sounded as though they did. Look at John Lennon. Every time he opened his mouth, or even Liam Gallagher. whatever he said was listenable.
I wonder, yeah. I wonder if there's still the same impact now from a musician as it was like back then. And probably not. Like compared to the 60s or 70s, you know, it was a newer sensation then, you know, with the emergence of TV and you know, all that stuff that came with the movement in the 60s.
Go on, someone else listening, please.
Does the book touch on that? Like how TV emerged, and then the Beatles were everywhere, and then people were chasing them down the streets.
Yeah, funnily enough, the author of this book argues, and it's a really compelling argument, I think, that TV was really the beginning of the end. TV, as in a television in everyone's house, was probably slightly delayed. I mean, certainly when Elvis and rock and roll began, and then there was all the great 60s boom. Probably my taste of music is that's the greatest zenith of music, I think. It's not all of the best music came out then, but a lot of it did. And
yeah,
it was really when the pop video accompanied the single. Before, it was just something you heard, or you might see the band lip syncing on TV playing it, but the video was a story, as we all know. And that became so essential that this book argues, and again I agree, that it became so much that the visual side of it became so important that the music became less important, and people got turned away, gradually turned away. And whereas, if the Beatles made a record, everyone would fucking go out and buy it. Everyone, you and me, we would all go out and buy it, but immediately we'd want to hear it. We'd be really anxious to get it. Whereas nowadays, no one sells anything that everyone wants. No one does. No one does. The sales are new. Even if there are sales, and everything's free anyway.
Everything's online.
Yeah.
All the artists,
everything's online. Yeah.
So
you pay via a streaming service.
They all provide it, even on YouTube. They all provide it for free. Like Iron Maiden, King Crimson, all the old bands, across genres. They'll stream their own stuff now, because that's the only way they can keep it more legit, rather than get other people just uploading it and streaming it, I guess. But I suppose that does affect the whole thing, because I suppose the Rockstar, like the whole idea, because in the 70s, even in the 70s and 80s, there was definitely a big thing. It was after the 80s, I think, what I've heard is when it changed, because up until and including the 80s, you had like everything from Queen and Pink Floyd to all the glam metal and the glam rock and everything, and other bigger bands, and they were all larger than life, big personas and whatnot, and they would get the people going and all that. But do you think it changed with grunge to a certain extent, because they were sort of had the anti-Rockstar image? And I've always disliked grunge for that reason. Personally, it's just my opinion, but I will say that I dislike a lot of stuff about grunge for that reason. But because I think it's like sort of this whole self-hating sort of thing, which I just think is just lame. But I do also appreciate the music. But do you think it's...
I'd be interested to Nick, like, because you grew up listening to punk, which was like anti, establishment and TV and all that shit. So it must have been a different kind of movement.
Well, when I grew up, punk kind of just sort of abstracted its way from the sort of general sort of glam rock and everything that was going on, and they were kind of the whole sort of anti-Rockstar thing. Ironically, they actually became all rock stars because the fans started dressing like them, and then everyone became the same, which is kind of their thesis, which was, you all got to be individuals and all different, rather than following a cult sort of trap. And even Johnny Rotten said that he said it died for him when he said they used to be doing gigs and everyone was dressing like them and not following their own sort of intuitions. And I think it's different. I think the whole Rockstar thing is kind of on the way now. I think people are kind of bored with it. You can be a big famous rock star, go and crash your car and stumble out of nightclubs at 4 a.m. with 3 girls on your arm and a load of coke round your nose. But that's kind of, I don't know, it's so outdated now. The last person that really
it does seem like it's kind of...
was Liam Gallagher. Liam Gallagher was probably the last of that sort of generation. And,
that sounds about right.
He loved to fight with the press, and he was their dream.
But wasn't it the whole point that because Britpop was different from grunge, wasn't it? Britpop was more. I don't know how you define it, but grunge was almost like an anti-Rockstar thing to begin with. Like it seems like from the '90s onwards, everything changed a bit, and you wouldn't a band like Radiohead or a band like, or even a band like maybe Pearl Jam wouldn't have even had any place in the '80s. They wouldn't have existed. They wouldn't have worked. But,
well, Pearl Jam are part of the grunge scene.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, like Seattle. They're from Seattle, right?
Yeah.
Same as Nirvana.
And Kurt Cobain, he was a complete rock star. He may have been reluctant. I don't think he enjoyed the fame whatsoever.
But he was a rock star. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think a lot of them actually don't like
what he embodies. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of the stars, as soon as they get into that environment, it's a big shock for them, isn't it? All of a sudden being recognised by everyone, being all over the papers and stuff. And I think some of them retaliate by just actually going off the rails.
Sorry, what was that last bit, Nick?
I think a lot of rock stars feel so much pressure on them that they just go off the rails because of the environment they're in, the pressure and constantly touring and
Yeah. And like knowing that whole story makes it seem less appealing in a weird way.
Yeah, play hard, party hard.
So, yeah, man, I don't know. With all the iconography of the rock stars that's come out, documentaries and books and everything, maybe some people read up on it instead of living it. They just want to, they want to see other people do it.
Maybe the whole problem is just selfishness generally, that all these people fundamentally wanted to enrich their own wealth, or they wanted to just party. They weren't actually thinking about how their art could be used to improve the lives of people and themselves. And I think that's what I believe is more important. Therefore, when you do get artists who've done that, who wanted to make a grand artistic statement in order to improve humankind, I prefer that, even if it doesn't quite work. If someone's aiming to do that, I think that's really important, and I think that's really worthwhile. And I haven't really seen that for a long time.
If I'd been brought up in an industrial town in the north of England, and I played in a band, and all of a sudden I was in the top of the charts and had multi-millions of pounds, I would be driving Rolls Royces into swimming pools and stumbling out of nightclubs because coke down my nose and leading a hedonistic lifestyle, because it's kind of like the dream thing. It's like, well, I've got this money, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're just seeing how far you can go with it. Yeah, it's crazy, but true.
I mean, obviously, there is a lot to said that alcohol and drugs can actually help performance.
Yeah.
But I knew the bass player from a band called Ace. They did a song called "How Long Has This Been Going On?" with Paul Garrick, who was the lead singer. And I said to him once, in fact, the singer of my band, Don South, said to him, he said, "How do you pluck up the courage to go on stage before a gig?" And he says, I have a glass of brandy. And his wife turned around and said, yeah, it started off as a glass of brandy, then it turned into a bottle of brandy before he went on stage.
Oh, yeah. Well, that says it all, doesn't it? Yeah. It's just kind of like multiplying it each time he does it. He's going to have 2 glasses the second time, and then...
Yeah. So, Alex, is the rock star dead?
Well, we seem to be skirting around it. We're getting there. Don't you think that? I would say that the reluctant star has always been around. Someone who was shocked by it and couldn't handle it. Look at Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. This in the early '60s. He was a really sort of one of the pioneers. He went mad. Gene Clark from the Byrds. He went crazy. So I think if everyone picks up a guitar and they write a song and they make a band, and typically as a kid at school, and they like what they hear and they like their band and they love their own music, and then if they do become successful somehow and they start having money thrown at them, then the temptation is always going to be there. You've got roadies and groupies and all kinds of people. And if you're in a hotel and you're away from home, and you've got girls, or if you're a female star, you've got boys chasing. I don't know, whatever it is. You're bound to go mad. Really, you're absolutely bound. And the more money and the less responsibility and the less accountable you are. Especially if you're leaving town the next morning. You know, you just
Yeah.
It's
Of course,
bound
yeah.
to like just implode, you know.
right. And if the record company and your producers and helpers are going to pick up the bill, and you're unaccountable, and not only that, people are pushing you to do more and more and more, drink more and take more drugs. You plan to do it. So I don't think there was any real change from the Little Richard and Elvis. Well, Presley was a goody, but let's say the 50s people, well, certainly the 60s rock stars. We know that they were like little devils really when it came to their tours.
Yeah.
Then through the 70s and 80s, I don't think there was any real difference, and I'm sure Oasis, they were up to it as well. And so it's because they had this wealth. And if they're no longer doing that and that person no longer exists, then we're back to square one. Is it because there are no sales anymore and there's no money to be made in it? And the Rockstar died because of that, because of downloading came along and also copying of the compact disc predated it, and then iTunes, and YouTube. So these three steps just murdered it. And the records companies, it's well documented, they had a boom, like a massive boom when compact discs came along and people threw away all their records and replaced them with CDs. What people were doing, the whole world was rebuying their own record collections.
Well,
I think so. There was all this money came along, and then it all vanished because everyone's learned copying.
Well, I think people still do live events. This is the thing. This is the thing. Well, I know for a fact that when lockdown ends, live events will 100%. They'll be massive because people. The thing is, maybe there's not as much money in it now, but I've seen from my own experience, and I know there's something much more potent and powerful. You simply cannot replace. In a live event, you cannot simply get that online on TV. It's not the same thing.
That will never die. Yeah,
it's like and that's what I like about it. That's great, but I think there's a difference between that and the Rockstar being a thing. Because maybe it's more like back in those days, it was like you had to go to get the full experience. Now it's like you've got a choice between some of the experience and the full experience, and the full experience is more money. And so until they can find a way to do it for cheaper. I mean, this is the reason why the lodges and / afterculture did so well, and why you guys have done all right, with your bands and stuff, because as local groups, you've offered gigs for very little money, and often done gigs for free, right? You know what I mean? And so people can get that experience
usually for a beer.
Money. And why should people pay money?
Yeah, there's a beer or two. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what you said. Sorry, it's all very quick.
So just a pint, after the show. That's all we needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah.
We didn't even need that, but it was a nice gesture from the bar.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like, to me, it's like, when I saw the Lodgers first, and I think shortly after, I think I saw you guys actually, Noble Rod, and then I saw your other band, Euphoric Recall, with Laura and Paul, and to me, it was always like seeing something live, like at the Cricks. It was and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's really important because of the connections people make. But there's a difference between that and being a rock star, so to speak. Now, Laurie, for example, would go and busk in the streets, and probably will go back to doing that once once lockdown ends. And he would make plenty of money. He wouldn't charge people anything. He wouldn't charge people you don't have to pay for watching a busker. You can just go by. But what I love about it, what I respect so much about that whole mentality, is the fact that people who are willing to do their art for people for the love of it, not because they want to make money. And the irony is, he ends up making money anyway because people like it so much they want to pay it. So I think that maybe is the way forward. People for so-called rock star kind of people to take on that kind of mentality, to take on the mentality they want to just share their art with as many people as possible. You know what I mean? I think that's maybe the way forward. But obviously, people are greedy, and I don't know how you combat greed. It's one of the hardest things.
A big difference that's happened, though, is obviously with the advent of the internet and channels like YouTube and the SoundCloud and all the rest of it, is that there's more music available from people who are unestablished. So the record company is actually struggling to find artists or pick up artists on an ever-growing market, whereas before in the 60s and 70s, you only kind of had available what was issued on vinyl or you heard on the radio. And I like your point earlier, Alex, because video did kill the radio star, which was a Trevor Horn wrote a song for the Buggles. and basically encapsulated exactly what you said. That as soon as video came out and people were doing video promos for their new singles, it kind of destroyed that whole thing. It destroyed the whole sort of live environment for start, and then it's been on the decline ever since. You know.
Yeah, because if people don't need to leave their house to see something, i.e., like watch it on TV, then people are going out a bit less, maybe a lot less. Yeah.
We are now, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some more than others. Some people don't watch TV at all, like yourself, Alex. Nick, you don't. I watch a bit of TV, but not a ridiculous amount, I don't think. Tristan, what about you?
Sorry, could you repeat that? What was the question?
Do you watch a lot of TV?
Well, I don't have a TV, so I watch everything online on the computer. But in terms of, you mean like I use YouTube a lot? Yeah, all the time. But what do you mean specifically? Is that what you meant, like YouTube and stuff?
Well, we're just making the point that, like, if you're at home watching things on a screen that you don't need to leave your house to see anymore, then you see what I mean? You're staying in a lot more.
Well, like I said, this is the thing. It's never going to be quite the same thing. And like, so I had a long period of isolation due to various mental health reasons and mental health reasons. The reason I started the PAC. So I'm going to be honest about that. And I did have those issues for a long time. And I stayed in, and I talked to people on forums, and I did things online, and I was probably more outrageous than I was when I first met people in real life, like when I first met you guys, for example. However, it's never the same thing, never the same. And the proof of that is that in real life, as you probably know, gone to many places, haven't really had very many issues because, people are who they are, but people put on a front when they go out, right? The people have to wear a mask. We've been talking about the mask a lot recently, haven't we? People have to wear a mask. But when I was on the forums, when I was like 14, 15, 16, because that was when the internet was more or less newer. I was 15 in 2004. I was born in 89. So back in those days, it was more forums than texting and stuff. This is the point. Online, you can just be either totally yourself, or you can create a persona, but it's not real. It's never.
Yeah, but like the interesting thing about that is the person on the other computer doesn't know either if you're being totally real or you've created a persona.
And this leads me back to the main point about COVID-19 and events and stuff, and why it's so important that we do everything we can to strengthen the live events industry, because all the kind of pointless nonsense that goes on online, in real life, it's not as tolerated. People do have to behave better, they have to be better, and that's important. People need to be like that. It's because of live events that people have improved themselves. For example, Nick, you really think people who, like myself, who struggle with anxiety, would have been able to overcome that through an online platform as easily? I would say probably not, but, it's real life.
I don't think so, yeah.
Real life is what it's all about. Okay, so what do you guys think about the idea of, like, how much do you think that real life events impact the mind? And this goes back to COVID, because that's affected that. Do you think I'm right? Do you think it's a huge difference compared to online? Or do you think you can potentially replicate that online? What do you think?
No, I don't think you can replicate it online because you're not in a room with loads of people and sharing that same space together.
Or outdoors, yeah, same thing. Stadiums.
Yeah, or a field or whatever, But like sharing a space with everyone physically, I think
the last time I jumped up and down for an hour, literally jumped up and down with a huge grin on my face, was when I went to see the Damned at the Roundhouse a couple of years ago.
The Damned, wow,
nothing like.
Oh yeah, I bet you love that.
Especially a band you've loved it all your life. You they come on and there they are. You just want to give them a kiss. So
Alex, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm getting on a bit. I'm a 90s generation.
I'm 52. I'm 52 years old. I remember seeing the Damned around on their first outing.
Yeah, me too. Oh, not the first ad. I was really very much. My first love was the Down with Captain on guitar in the 80s, early 80s.
Yeah. And brilliant.
So yeah, well, so you can guess my age from that. I hate singing. I hate guessing it.
I love that.
Do you ever feel like?
Good.
I think a lot of our
especially with these two youngsters on online.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
By far.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
Whippersnappers. Whippersnappers.
Yeah, I was born. I was born right at the end of the 80s. So I was literally born in 89, which is the same year as quite a lot of good albums that year too. A lot of metal albums, which is ironic given I got into it that time. We're not that.
Well, I'm the same. All of my favorite music was before I was born, or before I was around. All of it.
Yeah, me too.
All of it. It was my dad's.
Well,
my music collection is really my dad's music collection. Really, isn't that the same for most people?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well,
is that where you found John Fahey?
No, I discovered John Fahey just by reading about him, but he fit the bill, all right. He fixed his guitar.
Yeah, he fits the bill of someone I thought maybe your dad knew. Yeah, he's fucking amazing.
Well, when I was a kid, it was Neil Young and Grateful Dead all the time.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Dylan, he'd play that endlessly. But my dad was he wasn't stuck in the in his era. He went on. He was playing anything. He would play whatever was recent.
Oh right,
good, yeah. He was always up to date.
My dad, God rest his soul, when I became a punk, right, he was pleased. He was pleased because he said to me, when I got into modern jazz, and his dad had been a pianist in huge big bands, like swing bands and stuff like that. When my dad got into modern jazz, my granddad, his father, couldn't understand it. He didn't like it. He thought it was dreadful music, and he thought it was completely anti-music, and he hated it.
What did he hate?
And what? Yeah, my granddad did. He couldn't modern jazz. He couldn't understand it. He couldn't work it out because he didn't follow the same templates as what he played in the Great Foster's band. So it was all kind of like ballroom dancing sort of stuff. And my dad kind of embraced punk. He loved it because my dad loved all sorts of music, and he didn't care. He knew technically punk wasn't actually that clever music-wise, but he loved the whole thing. That it was a new birth to life in music, and he could see it out there what was happening. That it was something the kids were getting involved in, and he loved all that sort of new genre of music coming along, even like the dancing. My brother took my dad. My brother took my dad to see the Fun-Loving Criminals. When he was about 70, he asked my brother if he could get tickets to the Fun-Loving Criminals, and they went to see him.
They did Scooby Snacks, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're not my cup of tea. My dad used to listen to anything, and he'd give anything a chance.
I mean, I think some new music is going to evolve somehow, like within the 20s. It has to. It's a matter of nature.
We're already in the stagnation period now. The last big thing.
This is like the peak of
the last big thing to come was, of course, the dancing, which completely shook up the whole of the music industry, because all of a sudden, all the venues were empty, and people going to these illegal raves in warehouses and fields and stuff, and it was ungovernable. And the record companies didn't know where to turn with it. They didn't know what to do, because there was all these DJs going out, generating money that they would keep for themselves. And there was no payback to a record company. It was all this huge party scene. It was great.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That was the last.
Yeah,
that was the last big sort of upheaval of the music scene.
Yeah.
What year? What era is this, sorry, Nick?
This is the rave scene, so it would have been sort of the late 80s, early 90s.
Early 90s. I mean, the rave scene is still living on.
But it's all controlled now. It's all controlled. It used to be so lawless when I was involved in it.
It's more controlled probably now, yeah, but like there are still great forest raves, great events, during the summer. and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, I mean, I don't, when you say uncontrolled, how many people would gather at these illegal raves?
Well, there'll be a group of us in a car with a phone, and we'd all be told to meet at a petrol station, and then because the police were onto them all the time, so it was always diversion tactics. So okay, we've got to go to this junction on the M4, whatever, and you go there, be loads of other cars, and we're all going off in convoy, and then we turn up in some farmer's field, and there'll be a sound system set up, and it'll all be kicking off, and invariably the police would come along and raid it at some point. But there were so many people there; they had no sort of power.
They can't shut the whole thing down.
Yeah, and you know, they couldn't even deal with the amount of drugs that were there. There were so many people out of their brains and knees that they could just arrest them all and put them into the police cells. It just never worked.
And these people have superhuman strength, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It was never a violent scenario. It was never sort of obviously an odd scenario with drug dealers, but everyone was all loved up and hugging each other and just getting into trance music, which is exactly what it is. It's just a repetitive beat, bam, bam, you know.
Yeah,
actually,
music. Yeah.
Since I've stopped doing ecstasy and stuff, every time I have, which is rare, every time I have had to go into a club and listen to that sort of music, I get bored of it within the first 20 minutes, because I think if I had a knee, I'd probably love it all night. But it didn't really do anything for me. It was very much a music scene that was completely based on people being out of their brains on drugs.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's music out there like techno and psytrance that sober I would never really think to put it on.
Yeah.
Maybe occasionally, but like, yeah, mate. If you're on amphetamines or something like that, that music is the shit you want to hear.
It makes you want to dance, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It exists in this weird kind of realm of music, you know.
Well, one thing, this is an interesting point, because one thing that we haven't yet touched on. Now, Reece, by the way, Reece may not make it because he got stuck at work doing something. What we'll do is we'll just gradually go into the second topic now. I think may as well. And Alex is obviously welcome to stay on. So we're going to go to like 10:15 or so. 10. So yeah, all good.
It's up to you, Alex. If you need to leave, you can leave.
But we'd be happy if you stay on.
I'm enjoying. What is the second topic? There's a good chance I won't know anything about it.
That's cool. Well, here we go. I'll just post it in the chat. So basically, it's about culture, philosophy, and music and spoken words. So this could apply to anything. So it includes what you've done with your bands and stuff. So you probably would get. So I've posted it there. But it's about how do the arts and the culture interact with one another, basically. Like cultures. So you know. Like a culture or subculture, but also like human cultures generally, and the arts, how are they related, how do they interact, and you know, with the philosophies they have, in what sense, like, does that do they impact one another, really? That's the question. And I'll give some examples from like classical music and stuff, but yeah, I want you guys to go first, so yeah, go for it.
Surely all culture is defined by its art. Well, whether it be painting, whether it be music or dance or whatever, that is part of the culture. If you talk about the culture of any given nationality, the first things that will come to the fore would be their art and their clothes and their fashion sense, music and whatever, you know.
Yeah,
should be. Yeah,
that is the first thing you associate with any culture.
I personally agree. I personally agree, but maybe there are people who would initially think about the politics and like, then associate the culture more to the political state. You see what I mean?
Or philosophical.
Or philosophical, yeah. But I think, like you, Nick, I think I see the art first as well. And like the poetry and, you know, books and things like that. Yeah.
They all have them. If you look at the Islamic faith, it's a lot of their art is actually kind of it's almost it's symmetrical shapes and really intricate sort of designs.
Yeah.
And all cultures have a kind of you can look at anything, look at everything. Look at all the main great civilizations, like the Egyptians and the Romans, the Greeks, and all that. That was all completely the remnants of those civilizations have been art, whether it be statues or paintings or philosophers. I personally, I can't really see how philosophy and music are that intertwined.
Well, I can give some examples, but I'd like to hear what Alex thinks about this first before I make my points.
You have the floor.
Yeah.
Kristen, why don't you give us your examples first and let me have a little bit more of a thing.
Right, okay.
You have the floor, Tristan.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, so my musical background, so to speak, was mostly classical music and also, to a certain extent, jazz and progressive rock, which obviously that's, I'm very much into that now, to rock and stuff. But obviously, in terms of like literature, that's true as well. I think when I was growing up, I think the books I knew the most was I read Frank Herbert's Dune quite a lot, Lord of the Rings quite a lot, and everything related to that. So the sci-fi and fantasy has always been in my life very strongly in terms of a genre, and that goes across different things like Jeff Wayne's War of the World. Big fan of that. That's sci-fi, right? So that's a musical based off a book, and there was also a radio play, wasn't there, by Orson Welles, ironically. But my example really was about, in terms of philosophy. Well, I don't know to what extent a philosophy can impact the way people perceive an art form if it's imbued with that philosophy, but I think there is definitely something to be said about that, because I know that Wagner was very much influenced by philosophies of various kinds, and his music, for better or worse, ended up making a big impact on me because I heard it lots as a kid. See, my parents played a lot of classical music, but I didn't like all of it, obviously. What
were Wagner's beliefs?
Well, I mean, it shifted a lot, really. I mean, he was, this is a reason, probably one of the reasons why he was appropriated, unfortunately, by the Nazis, was because his music is so extreme and intense, and that may be because he was basically a narcissist and very neurotic and really unstable. Would use people a lot for his own ends. He would go from place to place trying to get his operas performed and he succeeded eventually with many of his projects, and in a very big way, including that massive Ring cycle, which is 16 hours of music. Really the question is, to what extent do you believe philosophy has an impact? Because I think the Rockstar question does relate to it too, because all those people, I said, like Liszt, for example, and Paganini, with the way they play their instruments, that was, in a sense, that was a philosophy. That was like a musical philosophy. They wanted to make an impact on people, but they were the first rock stars in a sense. But then, is it because of having a philosophical underpinning to what they were doing? Is that the reason why it was so powerful? Is it because modern art hasn't got enough philosophy behind it, that it's sometimes more shallow? I don't know.
I don't understand how philosophy can be anything other than a narrative and a series of questions to stimulate yourself into an answer about society, humanity, and life. Mm-hmm. Whereas I don't particularly think you can get that across with music.
Oh, this is interesting. So what I just took from that is that philosophy will forever be opinion. Only comes from someone's mind. Whereas music isn't an opinion at all. Music is just sound.
Exactly.
It has no opinion.
You can get exactly. So music can create an emotion, as we all know. You can have you can be happy, sad, angry. It's kind of inspiring in many ways. Yeah. But to be philosophical, surely you have to have kind of a dialogue that you're asking your listeners to kind of contemplate or expand.
I think it's interesting, but I think music can imply philosophy to the listener. So when you hear it, you think this person thinks about this in a certain way. From listening to their music.
So is that's the emotion though that you're getting from it. You're
Right.
not actually getting. You're not asking yourself a question other than, is this music happy, making me feel happy, or making me feel sad? I don't think you can actually derive a message of what philosophy means just through listening to a bit of music.
Oh,
You'd have to have a lyrical content in order to be able to.
Right. What you're saying is that instrumental music only, music without any lyrics, can't be philosophy. No, of course, yeah, that's true. But
and then if you put lyrics on top, obviously you can in some philosophy.
I mean, this is what's interesting, like program music. You know, like say, like things like there are symphonies that have a program where the movements mean a specific thing, like Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, or there's like the Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, it's a ballet, and it has specific meaning. Or Swan Lake by Tchaikovsky, they have meanings. Okay, so because even if they are just instrumental, they have meanings that are inherent in the visual. Like a ballet, is the meanings inherent in the visual. For Copy of Romeo and Juliet, there's a meanings are in the visual, right?
Yeah.
Music, in a sense, when there's actually ballet is a really interesting example because it's more like silent film in a sense, because you could in a silent film you could have a soundtrack music, but you wouldn't have had vocals. Am I right? So you would.
But all right, okay. I agree with that. So imagine you just took the whole ballet aspect out of it. Imagine you've never seen the ballet you didn't like. You put that piece of music and someone said to you, so what's the philosophical nature of this music? You wouldn't be able to say. You could say, oh, this bit makes me feel a bit happy, this bit makes me feel sad, without actually having a ballet of dance, or a group of dancers enacting what the music is supposed to be representing. You wouldn't have that message.
Well, the irony, yeah, you're right. And the strangest thing about it always as well is the connections people make on literary terms. So, for example, if you get the name of a piece, then the name itself might impart an image to your mind. So, yes, Swan Lake makes you think of a swan lake, of a lake with swans. So you'll get that inference from the words. But if someone didn't tell you it was called that, you wouldn't necessarily know that. It's really interesting the way an abstract art form like music interacts with more specific things like writing, isn't it? Because they do interact in a strange way, music and like literature and music and I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an influence of philosophy on music, but like the music itself, philosophy will always be interpretive.
Right. Okay. This is the point. What the point I was going to make about Wagner was that he literally was, and wasn't the only person to do this, but he was specifically using music to enhance the power of the drama he was trying to tell with his words. So he wrote his own librettos, I think, like the lyrics to his operas, most of the time, most of his operas. And he wrote the music not separate from that at all, but completely intertwined with it. So to the point where the music was literally enhancing the lyrics, the same way that music in a film may enhance the way people feel about certain moments. We don't know how Star Wars would be if a different composer than John Williams had written the soundtrack, do we, for example?
No, yeah, good point.
Really interesting. I find it so fascinating because you just don't know. It's not an easy answer, but it's really interesting to explore.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the soundtrack to a movie is the best part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like, I love some of the soundtracks in like Tarantino movies and stuff. Yeah, like Pulp Fiction. That's a great one.
He uses
those 90s works, like Reservoir Dogs. Yeah,
they use a lot of pop songs, don't they, rather than orchestra, which is it also perfectly valid. It's different.
Yeah, I just liked how he placed the music in certain scenes.
Yeah, and he uses kind of he uses a lot of retro music, obscure retro music that he'll put into his music, and actually make the music more famous than it was in its first outing.
Yeah, that's it. And then the scene is really complete with that song.
Yeah, I love his use of music in films. Jackie Brown is brilliant.
Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
Oh,
I haven't seen that one.
I've been meaning to watch that one actually
because
brilliant. I was looking it up when I was attempting to watch Blue Velvet. I was looking up Mulholland Drive, and I went and looking up Tarantino films too, and I found Jackie Brown, which is that's the thing. The music is, I mean, talking about Blue Velvet actually. I think I mentioned this last time, but he actually was listening to the composer Shostakovich we talked about in a previous podcast while he was writing Blue Velvet, and he told
really?
he told the composer who for Blue Velvet, whose name I forget, to literally to write music in a way that was inspired by Shostakovich, without ripping it off, but to write dark, atmospheric Russian themed kind of music. He actually did that. And I think film maybe okay. So with philosophy and the arts, maybe film is like the ultimate example of that, because film is like the highest level, apart from video games, you can get to in terms of interactivity. Because film is like theatre at the next level, isn't it? Because film is the visual and the music and the sound and the written word.
Yeah, film is everything. Yeah, from acting to fashion to music, lighting, camera work. It's so many crafts just interspliced.
The lighting in film is one of the most important aspects, I think.
It's genius, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something that like you could go your whole life never knowing anything about. But it's crucial.
You guys definitely watch more Orson Welles films. Yeah, Lady from Shanghai is really good, and yeah, Nick, I'll let you make your point with it. Lady from Shanghai and The Third Man really good.
Well, I've seen The Third Man. Yeah. I don't know about. Yeah.
Lady from Shanghai has got really interesting visuals too. Really, really weird camera angles and stuff, and all these. And almost every scene has got all these weird, the harsh contrast, black and white lighting.
What's that then? What's Lady from Shanghai?
I wanted to hear what Nick wants to say, but I'm going to quickly say, Lady from Shanghai is a film noir from the 40s, starring Orson Welles and his then wife, Rita Hayworth. They're all famous actors.
Okay, cool.
And it's just a weird
Orson Welles.
film. It's a psychological thriller where he gets caught in this web of deception and confusion and stuff. But because it's the 40s, it's all very subtle. It's not violent or sexualized.
Yeah.
It's always in all films. What I like about it, it's always the dialogue that says everything. When you can't show something, you just say it in dialogue. Like the Marlowe films, like The Big Sleep and all that. And, it's like that. But Nick,
cool, man. Yeah, I like that style. The film noir style is pretty cool.
Yeah,
and they all wear hats.
Have you seen?
I like the hats, man. I think hats are a cool style.
Lawrence, look up a film called Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Right,
Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Isn't that
PLA? Yeah, they pronounce it plaid.
Nice.
PLAID.
Played, yeah. Don't worry, but they think plaid. Okay.
It's a Steve Martin and Rob Reiner film, and Steve Martin obviously is playing a detective, but they use footage from loads of old black and white films with Jimmy Cagney in and everyone you can imagine, right? And they make a film out of all these bits. So they make Steve Martin look like he's in the same room as Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and all those sort of people.
Yeah.
And the film's really clever. It's really, really brilliantly done, and it's well funny. So what's it? Dead Men Don't
Wear Plaid. I've made a note of that. I'll check that out. Yeah, for sure. What's the other one? Wild at Heart as well.
Yeah.
We were talking about lighting and TV and movies, how they just incorporate like
that was it.
An eclectic bunch of different skills.
That's true.
And you were saying that after video games, you reckon video games are more interactive?
Because they are literally more interactive. Yeah, it's like they're not as realistic.
For the person to be able to control the potential outcomes of their experience.
Well, it's like I was thinking. I mean, this is a bit off topic. I don't want to go on about it, but I was briefly. Basically, there's these guys I watch on YouTube who I follow who are really cool. You might like them. I'll send the link to you later. But they basically they do this guy who does a lot of analysis of Star Wars stuff, which I'm a big fan of. Anyway, he talks about that. But he's also got another channel where he's gaming with his two friends who also do podcasts and stuff. They do a podcast about Star Wars books. But anyway, they play a lot of these games, and like one of them is like a pirate thing, and it's so realistic, right? It's literally like imagine like Pirates of the Caribbean, but if you were doing it, if you control characters and you create, and instead of there being a story, it's open-ended, and you can just have quests and missions like an old role-playing game, but with really good graphics. Released very recently. Okay, okay, it's not the same as a film because film has people's faces, and real film has actors, right? But video games, when they come close to replicating that, have, I think, a greater interactive potential. So in a sense, that makes them the most immersive art form in a way. But that's just
yeah, in its experience, not its like development.
But
maybe.
It's not
because if you think about a film crew, yeah, like at the end of a movie, the credits are long. You know, it'll like for a big box office movie, the credits last like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
like the amount of people who, on an interactive level of art form, I reckon a movie probably brings together the most kinds of skills, maybe more so than video gaming.
I've played video games all my life, right? And the one that I just love the most is GTA 5, because you don't actually have to play it as a game. You can just do what you like. You just go driving around.
Yeah. I love GTA.
And whatever car you're in, you can flick through all the different radio stations. And
the
soundtrack to that game is immense.
Yeah, I know. There's amazing music on that. Yeah. And you can just get in a car and drive around. You don't even have to do any missions
get a few chases with the old Bill.
Yeah, exactly. Like dodge them and then fuck off.
I must say, Nick, you did not strike me as a gaming person. I'm surprised. I didn't think it'd be your thing.
I've actually currently got this, which is a retro game. Show it to you. It's a Sinclair.
Holy shit!
So it's the graphics are appalling.
When's that from?
The mid '80s.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Before me and Lawrence were born, then.
Yeah. No, of course, yeah. And it was just like, basically the most basic graphics you've ever seen in an iPod. I actually filmed some.
They're like old arcade games.
I mean, this is the thing about games. Actually, I do feel it's not strictly on topic, but it is kind of, because when it comes to philosophy and all this and music, they're all interacting anyway, and music, and there's a lot of really good video game music as well. But the games themselves is that look, in a sense, they can still be a very communal experience. They can be like when you have multiplayer, when you have people like doing things together online. That's very common, People do a lot of games on other players online, don't they? So they talk to people that way. So
I've been playing online games with my mates during lockdown.
But Rahan, when you mentioned that.
I play Call of Duty with Rahan. Sometimes this other game called Rocket League, which is sort of like FIFA but with cars, like jet powered.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I can do on lockdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's all online now, because gone are the days where you would just split screen on your own on one TV, and you could have 4 players on one TV. It doesn't work like that anymore. All the games now are like one player online, so everyone has to buy the game and the console, and then pay for the online membership.
Yeah,
it's not as social as it used to be.
No, but like when it comes to the whole, so what it was I was listening to one of Wagner's operas, Tristan and Isolde, which I was named after as well, unfortunately, and I was thinking about this, and like it's really disturbing actually the extent to which philosophy can have that impact, because Wagner literally read the philosophy of Schopenhauer, which you guys probably heard of, the philosopher who believed that life was good. He was kind of like a nihilist, but a bit earlier, I think, just before Nietzsche, or about the same time. This is the 19th century, and he read that, and then he decided to write the opera based off reading that, and it influencing his worldview. Just like later on, he'd write operas and like I don't know exactly what it is, but people believe there's like anti-Semitism and like fascist imagery in his last opera, Parsifal, and things, and like all this stuff. And and the interesting thing about it is, right, an artist might not infuse their work with much philosophy at all. They might not. They might just be like doing whatever. Like say punk, for example. Okay, it had a point, right? But punk music was not like. I don't think the people who created punk got together, wrote a load of lengthy treatises, and were like, yes, we're going to make a grand artistic statement now. No, they were just angry young men who wanted to play music. It's almost the opposite of a grand artistic statement. Progressive rock is more like it's closer to classical in terms of the grand artistic.
Right. Yeah.
So, is it good for art to be so philosophically intertwined? I mean, is it necessary? I think it is actually, but that's just how I see it. But then it can.
I don't think it's like something that's the be all and end all of whether or not it's good. Like music, if it sounds good to me, I like it, you know, and like the philosophy is something I can make up on my own, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think
that's exactly what I agree with. Yeah,
you can separate the two, those two impressions.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah.
But like, if you get a positive philosophical impression from a song, you can take it or you can leave it. That's the way I'd see it.
This is why personally, and this is just my opinion, why I'm not really kind of, even though I like a couple of their songs, why I'm really kind of against Radiohead actually, because to me their lyrics are just meaningless. I've read them, but they just strike me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love that actually. Love Radiohead, it's brilliant, but his lyrics you can't gain anything from them. It's like really? he gets a load of words and chucks them in a hat and he pulls them out and goes, that'll do. Yeah.
He plays a game of Scrabble.
Like Paranoid Android. Well, this is what I mean. But this is the thing. Like, so Paranoid Android is meant to be a serious song. It's meant to have a serious intent. But the lyrics are about a time where he went to a bar and some weird woman like spat at him or something, and he tries to make that into a serious statement of rain down on me from a great height. All that. It's just like, you know, I just don't. I'm not backing them off, but I just don't get the point of that. Why would you want to make a serious point without making a serious point? It's just is that a modern?
He's an obscure writer. He's weird, but he's a brilliant writer.
I would have to listen to some of his stuff to have an opinion, but I did like it when people go out of the box in terms of lyrics.
Yeah, they're right. So.
Yeah. You were saying a second ago, though, that you said that his lyrics are meaningless as well.
Me?
Yeah, Nick, you were saying that Tom York's lyrics were meaningless, but at the same time,
but I still like them. I like the way he's kind of. It's almost like William S. Burroughs' technique, the cut-up technique, where he should just cut up bits of his story and just paste them about, and you read some of his books and you don't know what the hell he's going on about because he's just written the book out of order. He's had the idea and then he's cut it all up and just put it in, and whatever happens.
Well, this is another more big point that I always wanted to. That I want you guys to. I'd like you guys to answer really, and whether you think it's true or not. Do you think that bands like Radiohead and anything that seems to be purposely obscure with no point, is that a kind of postmodernism? Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, of course, it's completely. It's definitely. I go to modern art galleries and look at some of the stuff. I think it's just awful, you know.
But you think Radiohead?
Which it is. I don't think Radiohead was cool at all.
Is it just at the point of it's too abstract and like too, like to me, like I'll give an example. I went to the Saatchi gallery and I thought some of the stuff there was really bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they'll have a blue canvas and someone's just gotten a white spray paint can and just gone like what looks like, you know, just, you know, mindless kind of scribbling. And then they'll just
some cunt will buy that for £50,000.
Yeah, they'll give it a really self-important title, like Life's Mysteries or something, and you're like, what? I could have done that. And like,
it's like what Reece said on the forum when we were looking at Chris Moody's pictures. And he's got that one with the sort of creature coming out of the woman's belly on her breast.
It's amazing.
And
that could have been in there.
Reece said if that was at the Tate Modern, it would be called Birth or Rebirth. But that's what they. But Chris Moody, I'm more impressed with Chris Moody's artwork than I am with a lot of the stuff I've seen in the Tate Modern or a lot of modern art.
I've loved everything I've seen. I think.
You know what?
Everything he's done has really impressed me.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
you know what's good about it? It's because it's the opposite of postmodernist. It's not just meaningless. He's created some beautiful images that we can create our own meaning out of, as opposed to it's not just blocks. It's a real thing. You know what I mean? So I think maybe the reason why I don't, well, maybe I personally, I really dislike postmodernism. I'm not into it at all, and I suppose that's probably the reason why anything like that will rub me up the wrong way. So that's why I love Chris's stuff, because it's not like that. It's more like expressionism, which is almost the opposite of that. It's like it's very.
Do you know what? Do you know what one was brilliant? You know the one where he's got the two clown faces, and one of them was holding a knife.
Yeah.
That was man.
Yeah, that's
It's
brilliant.
a T-shirt. It's a T-shirt. You could sell
Just
that.
Yeah.
Well, we should totally.
Yeah, that made me think of proper like Stephen King style horror.
If I was involved in art, I would definitely take Chris's paintings.
You're-
Right? But I don't know anything about art, but if art dealing, but I would take his paintings because each one is kind of unique, and I just love that.
Well,
It's like
they're amazing. They really are. I would have those.
Well, I think this is the interesting thing about what we were saying about philosophy, because in a sense, postmodernism is almost like the devaluation of philosophy. It's almost like saying philosophy is all meaningless because nothing has any meaning, and that's probably why I don't like postmodernism, because I don't believe that. I think things do have meaning, but I think you have to understand what the meanings of things are, and you have to find a way to make it work for you, I guess.
Well, I think meaning is something that is a lot easier to figure out with hindsight. You know, you look back on years you've had, and at the time they baffled you, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's sort of. You see what I mean?
Well,
yeah.
So meaning at the time, you can be totally like in a kind of strange state of not really knowing, but just having faith in something, and then later on you're like, oh yeah, that was a good meaning. You know.
Lawrence, do you get this? Right, when you're playing the drums, you're practicing, right, and you're trying to do something, and you just can't get it. You can't get it. You're nearly there. There's always one beat slightly out, or on a note of guitar. There's always, and you think, oh fuck it, I'm never going to get that. And then you go to bed, you wake up the next day, and you go and do it, and you can do it.
And you do it straight away. Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. What the
like,
fuck is that? What is that about? That's incredible. It's like you go to bed, your brain calculates, oh, okay, now go, bang, and you do it.
Yeah, I think your brain sort of has a certain amount it can do, and then when you reach the limit of that, you can keep going beyond that limit, but you're probably only going to stay right like at that level of standard.
But then
when you go to bed, your standard's here, and then I think your brain then kind of restores the potential to learn more.
What is your point again, Nick? Because you were saying it's really interesting. What do you mean by like you have an idea and then you write it down, or?
No, it's like if you're trying to play. I'll give you both sides of it. So the first one is when you're learning a piece of music or writing a piece of music or whatever, and you're trying to get a bit that you can hear it in your head, but you can't quite get what you're trying to do, and then. Or it's a bit you're learning, even just trying to do a fill or a lead break or something, and you can't quite get it. And then you go to bed, you wake up the next day, and you pick up the guitar, or your drums, or your bass, or whatever, your bagpipes, and all of a sudden you can play it. And it's like you've just gone away from the thing for a while, and your brain's kind of calculated how it can be done, and then you approach it afresh, and it works. But then on the flip side, I have a thing where I'm playing something for ages, and I think, and sometimes you have to play it for like the same loop for 40 minutes just to get that bit in the middle where you completely get it in, you know where it is, right? I get this, so I'll be playing something on the guitar. I think, oh, that's really good, I like that. Blah, blah, blah. Then I'll go to record it, and when I record it, I'm playing something ever so slightly different, and I can't work it out. And by the time I'm going to record that, that's really good. No, that's not quite it. And as you're playing it, that's not quite it. How come I can't remember this? Right, and then the other day I went to bed and I went and played the piece perfectly.
Yeah. I think it's mad if you record something and you do it in such a way that you couldn't recreate that. Like you don't know how you made that happen on tape.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, fuck, if I have to play this again for people like live, I'd have to figure out what the fuck I did there.
Well,
exactly.
That's what I did with my piece of music. That's what I did because that's what happened. I couldn't replicate
it. So you recorded it in a way that you didn't quite know how you done it,
Yeah, it's literally just improvised. Because it was improvised, I knew what scales I used, but I didn't remember what notes I played exactly. So yeah, it's like, I think it's about to finish, so we may as well leave it there. But that was good, guys. Well done, really good. And I'll see you both tomorrow. We'll start at 8.
Video forum tomorrow night.
We'll start at 7:45 rate so that we can play his music. Okay.
Anyway, all right, we'll sign off with that. But good one tonight, guys.
And I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And Nick, I'll give you a call tomorrow. All right.
Okay, mate. Lovely.
All right,
well done.
later, guys.
Good.
See you tomorrow.
Have fun, guys. Bye.